turn. The state calls Deputy Bryce Haines.
Okay, sir, if you want to just step up right over here, and then before you have a seat, if you could turn and face her, raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
Deputy Bryce Haines, Haines.
Okay, and Mr. Saunders, the witness is yours.
All right. Can you tell us how you're employed?
I'm employed as a patrol deputy with the Brown County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed in that capacity with the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
Approximately 2.5 years.
And is that the totality of your law enforcement experience?
I worked for approximately 1.5 years in the village of Black Creek as a police officer.
But then for the last 2.5 years with the Sheriff's Office?
Correct.
And as a patrol deputy, do you sometimes get called out to respond to incident locations in the county of Brown?
Yes.
And you also have occasion to assist other jurisdictions with their own cases?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I want to ask you, Deputy, then about February 23rd of 2022. Do you recall if you were on duty on that day?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And were you dispatched to a residence on Eastman Avenue on that day?
Yes, I was.
And what was the reason you were dispatched to that location?
So deputies were requested to assist the Green Bay Police Department in locating a vehicle that was involved with what was dispatched as a suspicious situation. They requested that we look for a gold town and country van.
And do you recall approximately what time that call would have come in to your department?
I was dispatched at roughly 4:15 a.m.
And this is on February 23rd?
Correct.
And was there information provided that this van may be located at that Eastman address?
It was my understanding that the possible suspect had been driving the vehicle and staying at that residence.
Okay. And did you ultimately arrive at 2523 Eastman Avenue?
Yes.
And is that in the city of Green Bay?
Yes, it is.
And did you locate that reported gold van in the vicinity of that address?
Yes, it was located on the north side of the building.
Deputy, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 80. Do you recognize what Exhibit 80 depicts?
Yes, this is a picture of the gold Chrysler Town and Country minivan.
And the depiction in Exhibit 80, does that appear to be consistent with the scene around the Eastman Avenue address that you encountered?
Yes, it does.
Sorry, on February 23rd?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And that general layout of where the vehicles were positioned and everything, that's consistent with how you first encountered the scene?
That is correct.
Okay. I'd move Exhibit 80.
Any objection?
No objection.
80 is received.
And I'd ask permission to publish as well.
No objection.
That'll be published to the jury.
Okay, then Deputy, it's behind you, but also there's a screen in front of you if that's easier. So are we looking at Exhibit 80 now presently on the screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So when you arrived at this Eastman address, where are you positioned?
I was positioned, the van's facing south. I was positioned to the northeast of the van.
And when you arrived, you mentioned you were dispatched at 4:15. Do you recall when you would have gotten to this address?
Approximately 4:20, 4:25, probably about 5 to 10 minutes to respond.
And from that time, did you maintain a sort of visual on the vehicle?
Yes, once the vehicle is located.
Did you observe whether the van was occupied or unoccupied at that point?
It appeared unoccupied.
Did you see, during the time you were there, any other person walk to or from that vehicle?
No, I did not.
And then how long were you on scene for?
I'm not sure exactly how long I was on scene, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
And when would you have left?
I was relieved by an officer from the Green Bay Police Department.
So you were assisting, I guess, Green Bay, and then once they got there, you sort of left it to them.
That is
fair to say?
correct. That is correct.
All right. Thank you, sir. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Deputy Haines, what time were you relieved by the Green Bay police officer?
I would guess approximately 5 a.m. I do not know the exact time.
Okay. And you were called to go right to the Eastman Avenue apartment complex?
That is correct.
And it's a larger apartment complex where people live, correct?
Correct.
And when you got there on February 23rd of 2022, it was fairly dark outside, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and there was snow on the ground, right?
correct.
And were you told which vehicle to look for?
Yes, we were given the description as well as the license plate for the vehicle.
Did you arrive there by yourself?
No, myself along with two other deputies and our patrol sergeant arrived on scene.
Okay, did you get there first? Did you
I
get
was,
there first?
I arrived first, I believe.
Okay.
We all arrived roughly at the same time.
All right. You took your own squad car?
Correct.
When you got out, then what did you do? Did you walk?
I did
you
not
walk
get
by?
out of my patrol vehicle. I did not approach the vehicle.
Okay. You just parked behind it?
I parked to the northeast of the vehicle, not directly behind the van.
Okay. You didn't get out and walk around the perimeter of the van, is that fair?
That is correct. I did not do that.
And that picture that you saw, the back of that Town and Country minivan, it had all snow on the back window, right?
Correct.
And there was a car to the left and a car to the right of it, correct?
Yes.
And would you say that these vehicles were kind of parked fairly close to each other?
Yes.
When you were sitting in your squad car, could you see inside of the Town and Country minivan?
I could see the side windows. I could not tell if anyone was in the vehicle or not.
Were the windows tinted?
It was dark. I can't tell you if they were tinted any regularly or not.
Okay. Did you see any person, well, strike that. Did you put any police tape out there?
I did not.
When the other Green Bay police officer arrived, then you just left?
Correct.
Did you see anybody walking around the van or in front of the van while you were there?
No.
And the entire time that you were there, you were sitting in your squad?
Correct.
And you didn't see anybody come in or out of that apartment complex?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, thank you.
Thank you. You can step down. Next witness?
State calls Officer Garth Russell.
Okay, sir, if you want to step up here, and then before you have a seat, if you can turn and face her, raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath. And then I believe the media is aware of the situation with the video correct? Got it.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God.
I swear.
Have a seat and state your name for the record.
Can you tell us how you're employed?
I'm a police officer with the City of Green Bay
All right, and how long have you been employed as a police officer?
since October of 2016.
And prior to that time, do you have other law enforcement experience?
Yes, I was a military policeman in the United States Army
Okay. For about how long?
for approximately 2 years.
And then since 2016, you've been employed with the Green Bay Police Department?
Yes,
I want to ask you about February 23rd of 2022. Were you working as a police officer with the Green Bay Police Department on that day?
yes, I was.
And do you recall being dispatched to a residence on Eastman Avenue on that day?
Yes,
And to where were you dispatched on Eastman Avenue?
I believe the address was 2353 Eastman Avenue.
Is that a house? Is that an apartment building? Is that a duplex? Can you describe that?
It is an apartment building.
And why were you dispatched to that residence on Eastman?
I was dispatched to that residence. I was asked by Sergeant Bresser, who was the supervisor on shift, to first relieve the deputies on scene there because they were on scene, I guess, waiting on an individual to arrive. And I was also tasked with assisting in the locating of a gold Chrysler van and a person associated with that van and that address.
So prior to your arrival, you were informed that sheriff's deputies had already located the vehicle?
I believe the sheriff's deputies were on scene. I don't remember if they already located the vehicle or not.
But you were told to go to that area?
Yes.
All right. And when you got there, what do you observe?
When I got there, I subsequently walked into the parking lot with me and a few other officers, and we were told to look for this van, and then we were told to see if there was anything strange happening with the van or anything. So we walked the parking lot, saw the van, and then we went from there.
The van that you reported seeing, is that the same gold minivan that you were kind of looking for?
Yes.
All right. And you mentioned you were sort of walking around the van area. What happens next?
So while walking around the van, the marker lights on the van blinked twice, indicating that somebody was manipulating the keyless entry system into the van. Then once that happened, I think approximately 10 seconds later, someone came out of the apartment complex.
And the person that came out of the apartment complex, did you have contact with that person?
Yes, I did.
And did you ultimately identify that person?
Yes, I did.
And who did you identify her as?
I identified her as Taylor Schabusiness.
The person who you had contact with on February 23rd, as they exited the apartment complex, do you see him or her in court today?
Yes, I do.
Could you please point out what they're wearing and where they're sitting for us?
She's sitting to my right. She's wearing a black, what appears to be a thin jacket and a dark blue dress with a blue and white floral pattern.
I'd ask the record to reflect the witness identified the defendant.
It will so reflect.
No objection.
What happened when you observed Ms. Schabusiness then?
When we observed Mr. Business, I made contact with her. I subsequently placed her in handcuffs and noticed what appeared to be dried blood on her sweatshirt, the front and the back.
And did you make any note of any potential evidence on her hands?
Yes, I also saw what appeared to be smeared blood on both her hands.
During this time, you were working as a patrol officer? Is
Yes,
that
I
right?
was.
And were you utilizing any body-worn camera on that day?
Yes, I was.
And was it operational in your belief?
Yes, it was.
When a particular incident or an arrest is made, Is there a way for you to sort of save that body camera footage to a system?
Yes,
Does that allow you the chance to then review that at a later date?
yes,
And then do you enter that into your department system?
yes,
And have you also had the chance to review portions of your body camera footage prior to testifying today?
yes, I did.
Would you recognize it if you were to see it here in court?
Yes.
Judge, I'd ask then to play approximately 4 minutes from Exhibit 81.
Any objection, Mr.
No.
Freilich?
No.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you.
I think we'll dim the lights.
Hitting play at 0 minutes, 0 seconds.
Please, nobody, please, nobody. Nothing. Hey. Is this blood? Does this look like blood to you? Or am I just tripping? Bloody footprint? You see this right here?
Could possibly be blood.
Hey, who did that? Hi, Taylor. How's it going? Officer Russell with the Green Bay Police Department. Just make sure you ain't got nothing on you here. With Taylor. Taylor, you have one more for your, wrist. Just put your hands behind your back, quick.
Anybody else in your apartment?
You got blood on your hands here too.
No, on your hands.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to.
What apartment is it?
What apartment are you in?
Do we have Adam 3 come up?
Hey, Custom, get up here.
On the double.
Which apartment?
One, there's what they came back to.
Right here.
Yeah, go. Guys, hurry, get here now.
Start at the window right to your right.
Watch this window right here. Gun.
Dispatch.
Go in here. Come to the back of the apartment. That's where we are. You, come over here. 2 more will be fine. If 84 is here.
Hands up!
You have contact with the mail.
Hands up! Walk out towards me.
Have a seat.
All the
Have a
traffic,
seat.
all the traffic. Out towards me. Get out of the ground.
Who else is in the apartment? Be straight up. Tomes?
Hands up.
Who else? Just Tomes? Is he armed?
Go now.
Nobody's armed?
Nobody's armed.
You sure?
I'm sure.
What else? Anything else?
What's going on here?
Green Bay Police! Everybody get here!
Go ahead. Negative, we got enough here.
Okay, and for the record, 4 minutes of that exhibit, actually the entirety of that exhibit was played into the record. Officer, having reviewed that video, do you recognize the video that was depicted?
Yes,
Was that consistent with the body camera worn footage that you were wearing on February 23rd?
yes.
I'd move Exhibit 81.
Any objection?
No.
Received.
So I want to ask just a few questions then, Officer. There was an earlier part in the clip where you had noted some area of suspected blood, is that right?
That's right.
And what do you recall observing?
It looked like a couple of drops of blood in front of the vehicle, along with a footprint that was within, or that encompassed one of the drops.
And I guess was that pointed out to other officers who were on scene?
Yes,
You mentioned then the lights of the vehicle were activated and sort of flash, is that right?
yes,
And then about 10 seconds later, Ms. Schabusiness exited the apartment?
yes.
At the end of the video, where were you walking Ms. Schabusiness to?
I was walking her to my patrol car.
And was she, I guess, put in the back of the squad car?
Yes, she was.
Was there any further questioning or anything done at that point?
The only question I asked Ms. Schabusiness was if she knew why we were there.
Okay. And then did you ultimately just transport her then to the Green Bay Police Department?
Yes,
When you got to the Green Bay Police Department, what further steps did you take?
we placed her in interview room 3, I believe, where I had Officer Kenny assist me with taking photographs of what looked like smeared blood on her hands and on her clothing. I also had her remove the sweatshirt that had what appeared to be blood on it, as well as her socks and her shoes.
And then was another officer requested to assist with the further removal of some clothing?
I believe after I left the room, there was another officer that might have been asked to assist with the removal of some additional clothing so that Ms. Schabusiness could get temporary clothing because we wanted all her clothes as evidence.
The clothing items that you took, did those stay within your custody and control?
Yes,
And did you subsequently enter them into evidence at the Green Bay Police Department?
I did.
I guess in totality, on February 23rd, in your interactions with Ms. Schabusiness, did you ask sometimes some questions of her?
I didn't ask questions of her. I more like commands like, hey, please remove your jacket, please remove your hat, let me get your shoes, sit here, just commands, not really questions.
The commands that, your requests that you were giving Ms. Schabusiness, was she in that time following those?
Yes, she was.
Was she, in some instances, responding appropriately
Yes, she was.
in the context of your questions and commands?
Yes, she was.
For instance, did you ask, if there was anyone else in the residence at that point?
I did ask her.
Did she provide a response?
She did.
And was there a person located in the apartment?
Yes, there was.
Thank you, officer. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Thank you. Officer Russell, good morning.
Good morning.
So you were asked to go directly to 2353 Eastman Avenue on February 23rd of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Who asked you to go over there?
I was dispatcher, and Sergeant Bresser also instructed me to go there.
Sergeant Brester?
Yes.
Okay, did you go by yourself?
Several other officers were sent to the location.
And what was the purpose of you going over there?
The purpose of me going over there was to relieve deputies that were on scene along with assist with the overall incident.
Were you going over there to look at a vehicle or talk to people or what, do you know?
I was tasked, me and other officers were tasked with locating a person who was last seen with the victim, as well as looking at the vehicle as I described earlier.
Okay. So you were asked to go and see if you could make contact with Taylor Schabusiness?
Correct.
Have you been involved in death scene or homicide scene investigations prior to this particular situation?
Yes.
How many?
Death scenes, I can't recall a few, and at least one other homicide scene that I can recall.
Okay. And so on this particular date, you drove over there and you parked your SUV, correct?
That's correct?
And then you walked up, correct?
Yep.
And it was dark and there was a lot of snow on the ground, is that fair?
It was dark, there was snow on the ground. The apartment buildings provided light to the parking lot though.
Was it kind of a glared look outside that apartment complex?
Wouldn't necessarily say a glared look. It was dark, snow on the ground. The lighting from the apartment complex was adequate enough to illuminate the parking lot.
Okay. And is it fair that there are several vehicles all parked in front of the building at 2353 Eastman Avenue?
That is correct.
And did you have a license plate as you walked up?
Yes,
Okay. And on that video, was that you that was shining the light, the flashlight?
yes.
You found this gold minivan, correct?
I'm sorry?
You found the gold minivan?
I believe before, as we were walking up, the minivan might have been found already.
Okay. You walked around the minivan, correct?
Yes,
The vehicles that were on either side of the minivan were parked fairly close, so there wasn't a lot of room. Is that fair?
there was adequate room for people to get between the vehicles, the minivan and the vehicles parked on either side.
You walked on the driver's side of the minivan, correct?
I did,
Then you walked around the front of it?
I did.
At some point then, you heard a keyless entry system or some kind of beep?
I didn't hear any beeps. What I saw was a flashing of the parking lights on the vehicle, indicating that somebody might have manipulated a keyless entry system to the vehicle.
Okay. And how many officers were there at the time that you were there?
It was myself, Officer Fisher, along with Officer Whitman, and then Lieutenant Buckman was on the scene somewhere.
And then you, correct?
Yes.
So four?
I believe other officers arrived while we were on scene as well.
Okay. And at some point, you made contact with Taylor Schabusiness on the step outside the door, correct?
I did.
She was under the overhang, is that correct?
She came out of the common entrance for the apartment complex.
And you asked what her name was, correct?
I introduced myself to her and told her, so I introduced myself to her, if memory serves me correctly. I already knew who she was based on a records check while driving to the scene, looking at her mugshots via police records, which are accurate and reliable as they're kept in the ordinary course of business. I knew what she looked like.
Okay. And are you the one that handcuffed her?
I was.
And when you had contact with her, did you find her to be under the influence of drugs?
No,
Did you ask her if she was using drugs that night?
I did not.
You didn't ask anything about drugs at all, correct?
I did not.
Did she seem off as far as maybe being tired or just acting odd?
She did not.
What about her eyes? Did her eyes seem to be closed or like slits?
She seemed normal to me.
So then she was cooperative with you, correct?
She was.
When you handcuffed her, did you notice that she had some cuts on her thumbs or on her fingers?
I did not at that time. I did, however, notice a cut on her finger while we were taking pictures of her at a later time at the police department.
Okay, after you got to the Green Bay Police Department, correct?
Yes,
You were working with Officer Kenny then at that time, and you were having him take pictures with his phone, correct?
he used my department-issued phone to take the pictures.
Ultimately, you found out that she went to St. Vincent's Hospital to get some medical care for the lacerations on her fingers, or on her thumbs, correct?
I did not know that she went to St. Vincent's to get any medical care.
Okay. Find any knives on her?
I remember retrieving some items from her person. I don't remember if there was a knife there or not.
Any
When I
guns?
searched her incident to arrest, I don't remember if she had a knife on her or not.
Any guns on her?
I'm sorry?
Any guns?
No.
Okay. At some point then, after she was handcuffed, you had some safety concerns, correct? Or-
Yes.
And other officers did as well?
Yes, other officers had safety concerns inside the apartment.
Okay. And so they unholstered their service revolvers, correct?
Duty weapons.
Duty weapons. And then they directed their attention to the hallway of apartment 1, correct?
They directed their attention to an apartment that was on the lower level inside that common entrance area.
And that was Taylor Schabusiness's apartment, apartment 1?
I am not sure who the apartment is leased to. I just know that she was associated to that apartment per dispatch.
And the other officers were directing their attention to Scott Holmes from apartment 1, correct?
I'm sorry?
The other officers were directing their attention to a person by the name of Scott Holmes in apartment 1, is that fair?
Yes, they were directing their attention to a male inside the apartment.
And he was ordered to the ground at gunpoint, correct?
I remember them ordering him to come out. I don't remember whether he was on the ground at gunpoint or not. My attention was on Ms. Schabusiness at the time.
And you had Ms. Schabusiness come in and basically stand on the steps and ultimately sit down on the steps, correct? You gave her those commands?
I did.
And there was a wall blocking the stairs and the hallway, is that fair?
So the stairway was to the right of the hallway, and there was a short wall. I had her sit on the steps, and you can partially see outside in the hallway by where I was at, but I couldn't see what was going on by the apartment.
And then at some point then after Mr. Holmes was secured, then you walked Ms. Schabusiness to your cruiser, your SUV, correct?
Yes,
And you had her take a seat in the back seat, correct?
I did.
And then you asked her, why, do you know why we're here, correct?
Yes.
You rolled the window down or something, correct?
I may have rolled the window down.
And did she say a warrant? Yeah, a warrant? Or words
Yes.
to that effect?
Yes,
Okay. And then you rolled the window up and then you transported her over to the Green Bay Police Department, is that fair?
I did transport her to the Green Bay Police Department.
That gold minivan that you looked at, that belonged to Scott Holmes, correct?
I don't know who the minivan belonged to.
Okay, nothing further, thank you.
Any redirect, Mr.
No, Your
Saunders? Okay, thank you, sir. You can step down. State's next witness.
Lieutenant Buckman.
All right, if you could just step up right over here, sir, and before you have a seat, if you can turn and face her and raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
Name is Lieutenant Tom Buckman, Buchmann.
Okay, and Mr. Lezay, the witness is yours.
Lieutenant Buckman, can you state how you are employed?
I'm a lieutenant for the Green Bay Police Department.
And how long have you been with the Green Bay Police Department?
I've been with the Green Bay Police Department since 2009, but I've been in law enforcement with 2 other agencies since 1996.
And you indicated that your current position is lieutenant. How long have you been a lieutenant?
Since 2013.
And prior to your practical law enforcement experience, do you have any education and training to be a law enforcement officer?
Yes. I graduated from Loyola University in Chicago with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and then I attended the Illinois State Police Academy, and then the equivalency test over in Wisconsin to transfer my previous certification over to Wisconsin, and then ongoing training throughout the years.
Were you working as a lieutenant for the Green Bay Police Department on February 23rd of 2022?
Yes.
And were you called in to assist with an ongoing homicide investigation in the early morning hours of that date?
Yes.
What was your role upon initial call-in or response?
I was called in to assist on the road because the officers and supervisors were tied up with the investigation. When I arrived, I spoke with Lieutenant Sobiak, who was sitting on the shift commander's desk. He informed me that...
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Merely trying to have him set the table for what he was being asked to do. I don't need a specific answer to that question, though.
All right, questions withdrawn, go ahead.
After speaking with Lieutenant Sobiak, what did you do?
I went out to the 2300 block of Eastman Avenue. I was informed that there was a gold minivan at that location that was associated with the defendant in the case.
Were you aware who the registered owner of that particular minivan was?
Yes.
And who was that?
Last name was Thomes.
And you indicated you were informed that that van was associated with the defendant. Who are we talking about?
It would be Taylor Schabusiness.
And did you then travel out to the 2353 Eastman Avenue address?
Yes.
What did you do upon arrival there?
Well, there were Brown County deputies that had discovered the van, and they had kept the van under surveillance until they were receiving further instructions on what to do with the van. So myself and other Green Bay officers arrived on the scene and took over surveillance of the van and the apartment building until we received further instructions.
What did your surveillance entail?
Well, we just watched the area where the van was parked at the apartment complex. After a short time, I spoke with a lieutenant that was working the case and asked him what he wanted us to do with the van. And they informed us that they didn't know at that point in the investigation whether Schabusiness was potentially another victim or a suspect, or had the association, what association she had with the victim, or what her role was in the incident. So they told us to approach the van and to try to make contact at the apartment with Taylor Schabusiness and see what we could ascertain from that investigation.
And what steps did you take to do that?
So myself and a couple of officers walked up towards the van. As we approached the van, we looked inside the windows just to see if there was anything, any people inside of it, or any, we knew at that point they hadn't found the body of the victim yet. So we were seeing if there was a body in the van or anything that would stick out as being obvious associated with the crime. As we were stepping next to the van, we were also looking on the ground for footprints leading from the van. I happened to be on the passenger side. I did not see any footprints in the snow at that point from right outside the van. Then, while we were standing next to the van doors unlocked. We heard them unlock. And then the parking lights flashed, which is an indicator that somebody is using a key fob to unlock the van.
At that point, what did you do?
So the officers looked at each other, kind of thought, well, somebody just unlocked this van. A couple of seconds later, Taylor Schabusiness walked out the front door. It's the apartment complex it's got a main door that's shared with the apartments inside. She walked out of the main door of the apartment complex. I recognized her immediately because I already looked up her picture. So I recognized her and I immediately started approaching her along with other officers. I told her to keep her hands out of her pockets, and another officer put handcuffs on her and placed her under arrest. She had a warrant at that time. Excuse me. She had a warrant at that time, and we knew about the warrant, so they placed her under arrest for the warrant.
Thank you. Did you make any specific observations of Ms. Schabusiness's person when you approached her?
I did not specifically, but I heard officers talking that she had blood on her.
Objection, hearsay. Move to strike.
That's fine.
Okay.
That
I'll
actually-
sustain the objection. The answer is stricken to the extent that he got it out, so go ahead.
Were you able to observe Ms. Schabusiness's face when you approached her?
Yes.
And how did her face appear?
She appeared to be in shock or very surprised to see us. I equate it to a deer in the headlights kind of look, or a child caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
And you indicated that officers then placed her under arrest, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you present when that happened?
Yes.
And were officers giving commands to Ms. Schabusiness?
Yes.
And was she responding to those commands?
Yeah, she was complying with their commands.
Did she appear to understand what officers were saying?
Yes.
Did she appear to have any difficulty or trouble communicating with officers or following commands?
No.
After Ms. Schabusiness was placed under arrest, what did you do?
I then asked what apartment she came from the officers. They informed me that it was apartment 1. I immediately went inside the apartment building. We knew that we had to secure the apartment that she was in. Ms. Schabusiness had blood on her hands when she was arrested, so we knew at that point that there was, she was obviously involved in the incident, in the homicide, so we had to secure that apartment for maybe other victims or other suspects or evidence that would be inside that apartment. So we secured the apartment. I approached the apartment door and pulled out my handgun and held the door. The door was ajar at apartment 1, and I had other officers come in. We were going to make entry into the apartment to secure it for any other suspects that might be inside, for officer safety.
Did you make contact with any individuals when you arrived at apartment number 1?
Yes, the registered owner of the vehicle, Mr. Thomes, he opened up the door to apartment 1 before we went inside or did anything. He walked out into the lobby area of the apartment building, the main corridor. I gave him instructions to lay down on the ground, put his hands out at his side. He followed those instructions. He was handcuffed by another officer for officer safety, and he was removed from the hallway so that we could enter the apartment.
Did you do a initial sweep of the apartment for officer safety?
Yes, we did.
And again, the purpose of that was merely to sort of secure it then and maintain it for future evidence collection?
Yes, it was to check for suspects that might be hiding in the apartment, also to look for victims, and then to just secure the apartment. So we were only looking for people at that point.
On that initial sweep, did you notice anything in plain view?
No, I did not.
Did you notice anything else as you were leaving the apartment?
When I was leaving the apartment, I did notice on the floor in the main area where approximately where Mr. Thomes was laying down at, when I had commanded him to lay down on the ground, I did see like a tissue that had what looked like to be blood on it and a cigarette. And I pointed those out to Sergeant Schilling. Stayed on scene. I pointed those items out to Sergeant Schilling so that he could let the detectives know that those items were there and whether they wanted to collect them as evidence or not.
And after leaving the apartment, what did you do?
So then I walked out of the apartment and I was informed that there was footprints and possibly a few drops of blood in the snow outside leading up to the apartment building. I then had Officer Whitman, who was on the scene, secure that area with crime scene tape so that it would be preserved for when detectives would come later.
No further questions.
Cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Thank you. Lieutenant Buckman, good morning.
Good morning.
Couple questions for you, sir. So, on February 23rd of 2022, you were asked to go to the 2300 block of Eastman Avenue.
Yes.
Did you get a call from like at home or what?
Well, they called me at home to report into work. I reported into work and then was instructed by the lieutenant that was at the desk, at the shift commander's desk, to go out to 2300 block of Eastman.
What time did you report into work, do you know?
I think it was like 4:42 in the morning.
Was that kind of like your normal shift or is that?
No, I would have started at 6 a.m. They called me in early because of the incident.
Okay, what time did you get to the 2300 block of Eastman Avenue? Approximately.
Maybe 10 minutes later.
And you took your own squad car?
Yeah, I took a squad car that was available.
When you got to the apartment complex, did you park near Officer Garth Russell's squad?
I parked at the east end of the complex. I don't remember if I was next to Officer, I might have been next to Officer Russell and Officer Cups. I don't remember exactly who was all next to me. And I think it might have changed at different times depending on where we were stationed on the parking lot.
You had to walk up, correct?
Yeah, we parked our vehicles further away and we walked up on foot.
What's the purpose of parking farther away?
When you approach in the car, it's easier to see a car approaching than it is a person on foot. And so you want to have that kind of surprise or stealth to be able to walk up on something. If you don't know what you're approaching, we just had a homicide, so we're obviously concerned about people that might be involved in that homicide in the area. We want to approach on foot. You can hear things better if you approach on foot. You can hear, you don't have the car engine noise and the radio from the inside the squad car and whatnot making additional noise that you won't be able to hear what's going on around you.
And parking back like that, is it true that then you can kind of see the big picture as you walk up to a scene?
Sure.
Okay. You had learned that there was an apparent homicide, correct?
Yes.
And was it true that you were told to try to make contact with Taylor D. Schabusiness?
Yes.
Who told you that?
Lieutenant Bagoon.
Okay. And so you looked up a picture of her to see what she looked like, correct?
Yes, I knew that, I knew her face already because when I was going out to the area, they informed me that Taylor Schabusiness had some sort of relationship with the victim. And so we were going out there because this minivan was associated with Taylor Schabusiness. I didn't know all the details of the homicide because I never went to the scene there. I was just told that this van had an association with Taylor Schabusiness, so when I'm going out there to determine what's going on with Taylor Schabusiness, I wanted to know what she looked like before I got there.
Okay, thank you. Fair to say you'd never met her before, correct?
I don't believe I've ever met her before.
And when you drove to the Eastman Avenue apartment complex, you walked up Did you see the gold Chrysler minivan parked?
Yes.
Where did you see it parked? In
Uh,
relation to like the front door?
So if you go straight out the front door, if you're coming out the door of the apartment building, a few spaces to the right. So not far from the front of the apartment building.
Okay. And is it fair to say that there was a long line of vehicles that were parked in front of the complex? Is that fair?
There are several, yeah, there's several vehicles parked there.
And were there vehicles parked on either side of the minivan?
I know there was a vehicle parked on the right. I don't remember if there was one parked on the left or not. I think there was, but parked on the, if you're driving into the spot, the passenger side, because it was pulled forward like you normally would pull into a spot. And then on the passenger side was the side that I approached. And that, I remember there being another vehicle there.
Okay. When you approached on the passenger side, did you have a flashlight where you looked in the vehicle?
Yeah, briefly.
Did you see anything that was unusual or concerning?
No, I didn't see anything that would spark my attention.
Okay. And when you were approaching the Eastman Avenue apartment complex, was it true that you didn't know, that it was unknown whether Ms. Schabusiness was a suspect or victim? Is that fair?
Right, we didn't know.
But you and other investigating officers were told to be on the lookout for this van, correct?
Yes.
And you found it parked, correct?
I didn't find it parked. Brown County deputies found it parked.
Then you were told that this is the van that's a concern?
I was told that this was a van associated with Ms. Schabusiness.
Did you later come to find out that the van was owned by Scott Tomes?
Yes, I knew that when we approached it.
Officer Russell was dealing with Ms. Schabusiness, correct?
Correct.
And your task was to focus on whoever else was inside of apartment 1, correct?
That's correct.
And you drew your duty weapon, correct?
Yes.
And then you walked down the hall?
Yeah, it's a very short hall.
Yeah.
To the front of the apartment.
And you ordered Mr. Tomes, Scott Tomes, to get on the ground?
Yes.
And he complied?
Yes.
Did he get a little feisty with you where he was throwing chairs and wondering or yelling, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, he didn't really understand what was going on, but he did comply with my orders.
And at least at this point, your investigation was not far enough into it where you could understand what role any of these parties had, correct?
That's correct.
As it relates to the homicide, correct?
That's correct.
And Officer Russell was there, Officer Fisher was there, you were there, is that true?
Yes.
Officer Cups, and Officer Whitman was also there, right?
That's correct.
Officer Fisher was the one that handcuffed Scott Tomes, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you did a safety sweep of the apartment, correct?
Correct.
The apartment 1, right?
Yes.
And fair to say that you did not see anything in plain view that would be associated with a homicide?
That is correct.
You didn't see any large pools of blood, bloody knives, or body parts in the apartment, correct?
I did not see any of those things inside the apartment, in plain view.
Okay. And then as you were leaving the apartment, when Mr. Tomes was on the floor outside the apartment, there was a small towel-like item, correct?
Yeah, he was no longer on the floor. It's the approximate spot where he was on the floor.
Okay. But it was by him?
It was by where he was.
Okay. Ms. Schabusiness got taken away before Mr. Tomes was exited out of the apartment complex. Is that fair?
I don't know if she was taken away. When I separated from, okay, so Officer Russell put her in custody, put her in handcuffs, and then I entered the apartment building. I did not see Ms. Schabusiness after that. So I don't know at what point they left. I don't know if she was in the back of a squad car, if she had left the scene, or...
And then after this, you brought Mr. Thomas to a squad car, correct?
I did not.
A different officer did?
Yeah, an officer did.
Okay. Was it Officer Fisher?
I don't know.
Then
I was inside the apartment, clearing the apartment, so
Okay.
what happened outside the apartment, I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. After that, then did you go check around the apartment complex?
Yes, I did.
You checked the dumpsters,
Yep,
and you checked the parking lot for any indication of evidence?
yes,
Did you find anything?
I did not.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Can you redirect? Okay, thank you, officer. You can
Thank
sit
you.
down. Council, I think we're going to break for lunch. It's 11:45. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch break right now, and I'd ask that you be back in the jury room at 1 o'clock. So about an hour and 15 minutes for lunch, and we'll get underway promptly at 1 o'clock. All rise for the jury. Anything to take up before we break, Mr. Saunders?
No.
Mr. Freilich?
No.
All right, then we are in recess until 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Anything to bring up before we bring the jury back in? Mr. Saunders?
No.
Mr. Freilich?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Let's bring the jury in then. Okay, be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. The case is still with the state, so I'm going to turn to Mr. Saunders. Do you have another witness?
State calls Officer Tim Kenny.
Sir, if you want to just step up right over here, and then before you have a seat, if you could turn and face her and raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
First name is Tim, last name Kenny, Kenney.
Okay, then Mr. Saunders, the witness is yours.
Can you tell us how you're employed?
I'm a patrol officer with the City of Green Bay.
And how long have you been employed in that capacity?
12 years?
And is that the sum total of your law enforcement experience?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you about February 23rd of 2022. Do you recall if you were on duty on that day?
I do.
And did you have reason to assist Officer Russell with photographing an individual on that day?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you respond to take these photographs?
I was at the Green Bay Police Department, and he took me to an interview room.
Okay. And did Officer Russell have custody of an individual?
Yes.
And did you learn who that individual was?
Yes.
And who was that person?
Taylor Schabusiness.
Do you see that person in court today?
I do.
Could you point out where she's sitting for us?
She's sitting at the defendant's table.
And then what she's wearing?
Looks like a black cover with a black and blue blouse.
Okay. Thank you. I'd ask the record to reflect the witness identified the defendant.
It will so reflect.
And then what were you asked to do with respect to photographing Ms. Schabusiness?
There were, I guess, cuts on her hands and blood on her clothing, which I was asked to photograph.
Okay. And did you document, I guess, the exterior clothing areas?
Yes.
Those are photographs that you took?
Yes, they were.
Showing you it's been marked exhibits 82 through 86. I'll ask you to look through those, and I'll ask if you recognize those.
Yes.
And what do you believe those to be?
These would be the photographs that I took of her external clothing.
Okay. Thank you. I'd move exhibits 82 through 86.
Any objection to 82 through 86?
Exhibits 84 and 85 appear to be the same, so are you duplicity? So I'd object.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll hold receipt of those exhibits. I'll hold a decision on receiving those exhibits till the break. Nonetheless, go ahead. Are you planning on publishing them?
I was.
Okay,
They're
let me see
different
them.
photographs.
Let me just see them. Mr. Freilich, you're objecting to duplication of which ones?
Exhibit 84 and 85, Your Honor. They appear to be the same picture or photo. Sweatpants.
Any response, Mr. Saunders?
They're different photographs. One is an overall of the legs, one it focuses on one leg in particular.
Yeah, I'm satisfied these photos are different. Mr. Freilich is right. They are taken of similar areas, but they're differently focused, and the photos are different. So I'm going to overrule the objection. I will receive 82 through 86, and you can publish those to the jury if you so choose.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Judge, could we get the lights dimmed?
Yep.
Just briefly, thank you. Okay, officer, are we observing exhibit 82 currently on the screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and what does 82 depict?
That would be the outer sweatshirt she was wearing, which had dried blood on it.
Okay. And then 83, are we viewing that now?
Yes.
Okay, and what is 83?
The rear of the sweatshirt, which had dried blood on the lower part of it.
And then 84?
Would be the black sweatpants she was wearing.
And then 85?
The left leg of the black sweatpants.
Did you also observe a substance on that area?
Yes, there appeared to be matted blood in the area of the knees.
And then 86?
Would be the right leg of the black sweatpants.
And do exhibits 82 through 86, do those appear to be consistent with the clothing Ms. Schabusiness was wearing as you encountered her on February 23rd?
Yes.
Thank you, officer. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Officer Kenny, you made some assumptions with regards to what was on those sweatpants, correct?
Correct.
You didn't do any testing, correct?
I did not know.
Do you make comments like that before you verify what the results are? Is that your practice?
As to what it appeared to be?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, you were given a police cell phone from Officer Garth Russell, correct?
Correct.
And there was some discussion when Ms. Schabusiness was in the interview room about bringing her water, correct?
Possibly.
And then you were told, or someone was told not to bring the water, correct?
I don't recall, but it's possible.
Now, you observed cuts on Ms. Schabusiness's
I'm sorry.
fingers. Oh. Okay, that's okay. Sorry. Could you repeat that last question back, please?
You were told by someone you were told not to bring the water, correct? I don't recall, but it's possible.
Okay. You did observe cuts on Ms. Schabusiness's fingers and thumbs, is that fair?
Yes.
Some of the cuts were quite deep, is that fair?
Yes.
You used a cell phone to take the pictures that we just saw, is that right?
Correct.
And then what did you do from there? Did you have to download it, or what did you do?
I returned the phone to Officer Russell, who advised that he would later upload the photos into the case.
Okay. Were you present at Eastman Avenue on February 23rd of 2022?
Yes.
And did you go there with Officer Russell and Lieutenant Buckman?
No, I left the station and went there. Officer Russell, I believe, stayed at the station, and I went to assist with the scene there then.
Okay. Were you part of the arrest of Taylor Schabusiness or Scott Thombs?
No, I was not part of the arrest.
Okay, you were just there to provide cover?
I came after the fact, I guess to assist with security and look for lack of a better term, body parts.
Okay. Did you find any?
I did not know.
And we're talking about the Eastman Avenue apartment, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And did you see the gold colored Town and Country minivan?
Yes.
And where was that?
I believe it was parked on the north side
Right
of
in
the
front,
building.
right in front of the building?
Yeah, in the parking lot on the
Okay.
north side.
Okay. Did you see anything unusual about the minivan?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Officer Kenny.
Redirect?
No, thank you.
Thank you, you can step down. State's next witness?
State calls Officer Leah Whitman.
Okay, officer, if you want to step up over this way, and then before you have a seat, if you could turn and face her, raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God? I do. Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
All right. My name is Officer Leo Whitman, Whitman.
Okay, then the witness is yours, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you. How are you employed?
I'm employed through the City of Green Bay Police Department.
And how are you employed with the Green Bay Police Department?
I'm a patrol officer.
How long have you been employed in that capacity?
A little over 3 years.
Were you working as a patrol officer with the Green Bay Police Department on February 23rd of 2022?
Yes.
And do you recall being dispatched to a residence on Eastman Avenue on that day?
Yes.
And what was the reason you were dispatched to that location?
I was going to assist in picking up a suspect in a case that occurred on Stony Brook Lane.
And what did you do at the Eastman Avenue residence?
I just held a perimeter spot at first on one of the corners of the building, and then we were told that we were going to make contact with the vehicle that was seen in the parking lot, and I assisted in being like I was part of the arrest team with that.
Okay. After, I should say, which individuals were, I guess, arrested at that point?
It was Taylor Schabusiness.
Okay. After that, did you conduct a protective sweep of that residence?
I assisted in it, yes.
All right. And did you locate any other individuals inside the apartment?
Yes, a male by the name of Scott Thombs.
Okay. And when you were done doing the protective sweep, what did you do after that point?
I assisted with putting up crime scene tape around the van, as well as kind of blocking off the entrance to the Eastman apartment complex, and then I started a crime scene log as well for
Okay.
Eastman.
And what is the purpose of a crime scene log?
It's just to protect the integrity of the crime scene, making sure nobody that is unauthorized goes in to the crime scene, and everybody that is authorized to assist in the investigation signs in and then signs out, so we can keep record of who goes in and out.
And was that done with respect to the Eastman Avenue apartment building?
Yeah.
As well as the van that was outside?
Yes.
And both areas were sort of cordoned off by crime scene tape as well?
Correct.
When you were completed with those tasks, did you have any other involvement in the case?
Yes, I was asked to go back to the police department and assist in collecting clothing that Ms. Taylor was wearing.
Okay. And what clothing did you assist in collecting from
I
Taylor?
collected a black tank top, black sweatpants, a black bra, and then purple underwear.
Okay. And I guess, was that done in a separate area that wasn't being monitored, I suppose?
Yeah, we went into a separate interview room where there were no cameras, and my body camera was off, so we could give her privacy while she undressed.
Okay. And the items of clothing that Ms. Schabusiness was wearing, those were the items you listed off earlier?
Yes.
And did you take custody of those?
Yes.
When you're taking custody items of evidence such as clothing, what steps do you take to ensure the integrity of that item of evidence?
I've ensured that I was wearing gloves so I didn't get any of like my DNA or anything on the clothing. And then I packaged them in a brown paper bag due to them saying, I was told by a detective that there was possibly some red matter on there that could have been blood. We put them in a brown paper bag to make sure that if it was still wet, it wouldn't get contaminated by any kind of like plastic or anything.
That protocol you outlined, is that consistent with your training in how to collect items of evidence?
Yes.
And that's what you did in this case as well?
Yes, correct.
When you collected the, I think you said tank top, bra, sweatpants, and underwear, is that right?
Correct.
What did you do with those items once they were bagged?
I gave them to Detective Kemp.
Okay. And I guess, was he responsible for then entering it into evidence to your knowledge?
Yeah, yep, he took custody of it and entered it into evidence or the drying rack for clothing that's soiled in either like bodily fluids or anything. I'm not sure what he did afterwards.
And was Schabusiness provided alternative clothing?
Yeah, they provided yellow scrubs, I would call them, for her to wear.
Thank you, Officer. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Whitman, did you observe cuts on Taylor Schabusiness's fingers or thumbs?
Not that I recall, I wasn't looking, I was just focused on getting clothing and making sure she got dressed.
You initially went over to 2353 Eastman Avenue?
Mm-hmm, yes,
Okay. And that was on February 23rd of 2022?
correct.
And did you ride with anybody?
Sorry. can
Did you
repeat
ride with someone, or did you take your own squad car?
that? I was in my own squad car.
Okay. And then you met up with Officer Garth Russell
Correct,
and Lieutenant Buckman?
correct.
Anybody else?
I think there was a couple other officers there as well.
Was there an Officer Fisher there?
Yes,
And did you park a distance away,
yes,
and then you walked up?
correct.
Did you walk up on your own, or did you walk in conjunction with the other officers?
I walked up on my own.
Did you park quite a distance away so you could see what was going on?
Yeah, I parked in, I believe, the northwest corner of the parking lot, so I was still out of sight, but I could see the van and the entrance to Eastman from my point of view.
Were you told to be looking for a van?
Yes,
What kind of van?
it was just a tan Chrysler van with the license plate of 580ZJZ.
At some point then, you walked up to the van?
Correct,
The back of the van had snow on the back windshield?
from what I remember, yes,
Snow on the ground, correct?
correct,
And when you walked up, it was dark outside?
correct.
What time was this about?
Oh, I don't recall.
After midnight?
I can't really give a for sure time on when that happened.
Okay. Did you at some point hear anything or see anything with regards to lights coming on the minivan?
Yes, the lights, like the flashing lights came on, indicating either the van was being unlocked or locked at that time.
Okay. Did you walk around the van?
Yes,
Is that before you heard the lights come on or saw the lights come on? Or
Yes.
after?
it
Before?
was before.
Okay. And this van were there vehicles on either side of the van?
I don't recall.
Were numerous vehicles parked in front of the complex?
Yes,
Did you walk around the entire perimeter of the van?
no,
Okay. Which side did you walk on, the driver's side or the passenger side?
the driver's side.
Did you have a flashlight?
Yes,
Did you use it?
yep.
What did you do with the flashlight?
I just watched the ground to make sure I didn't compromise any kind of evidence that might have been on the ground at the time.
Okay. Did you use your flashlight to look in the van?
I looked into the driver's seat and that was it to make sure it was unoccupied.
At some point, did you have contact with Officer Russell near the van?
Yeah,
Was he raising his voice as to be careful where you step?
yes,
And then at some point then, did you see someone come out of the building?
yes,
Who was that?
it was Taylor.
And what did you do then?
I just assisted with the arrest team.
Okay.
I didn't put handcuffs on, but I was there as a presence in case they needed assistance.
You walked up to the front door where Miss Schabusiness was, correct?
Correct,
She was standing on the porch under a overhang, correct?
correct,
She was outside.
correct,
She was cooperative.
correct.
When you looked at her, her demeanor, was it calm?
Yes,
Did she cooperate with you and the other officers?
yes,
Was it Officer Garth Russell? Was he the one that put handcuffs and arrested her?
I don't recall.
Did you see Miss Schabusiness fighting?
No,
She was compliant.
yes,
At some point then, did you see Officer Russell take her back inside the apartment building and go over by the stairs?
I don't recall that.
All right. At some point, did you and other officers become concerned for your safety?
No,
Did you have to draw your service revolver?
we did, yes,
You did?
We did.
You took your duty weapon out?
yes,
Okay. And then did you hear yelling for a male to come out of apartment 1?
yes,
And that was Scott Tomes?
yes,
And were you part of that process?
briefly,
Okay. Did you assist Officer Russell with bringing Miss Schabusiness to the squad car?
no,
Okay. He did that on his own?
yeah,
Okay.
I don't
And
know.
you,
I'm not sure.
did you assist the other officer that was dealing with Scott Tomes?
Yes,
Okay. After all that was done, then were you told to go back to the station?
yes.
Who told you to go back to the station, do you know?
I believe it was Detective Kemp called me.
Who did?
Kemp?
Okay, excuse me, Kevin Kemp?
Yes.
Detective, right?
Detective, yes.
Yeah, okay. Did you do a protective sweep?
I assisted with it.
Okay. Did you find any body parts or anything that was cause for concern?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And you helped with doing the crime scene log?
Correct.
Is that where you log people in and log people out?
Yes,
Did you put up crime scene tape?
yes.
Where?
It was around the van and then around the front entrance of Eastman to kind of block that part of the crime scene off.
You did all that before you left, correct?
Correct.
How long do you think you were at Eastman Avenue?
I don't know, maybe an hour?
Okay. And then you collected these items, the tank top, the sweatpants, the bra, and the underwear, correct?
Correct.
And they were all sealed in a brown paper bag?
I did not seal them. I just put them in the brown paper bag and gave them to Detective Kemp.
Okay, and then he dealt with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Redirect?
No, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You can step down. State's next witness.
State calls Kevin Scott.
Right, sir, right up this way. And then before you have a seat, if you could just turn and face her and raise your right hand, she'll place you on your oath.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
My name is Kevin Scott.
Okay, and Mr. Lezay, the witness is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Scott. Can you state for the record how you are employed?
I am a DNA analyst at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory in Madison.
And how long have you worked as a DNA analyst?
I've been there for about 10 years.
And is all of your work as a DNA analyst, is that with the State Crime Lab in Wisconsin?
Yes, it is.
Could you briefly address your educational background and training that you've had that qualifies you to work in that capacity?
Yes, I received a Bachelor of Science degree majoring in biochemistry from UW-Madison. When I was first hired at the lab, I received approximately 1 year of in-house training at the lab that covered every aspect of DNA analysis that the lab uses. In addition to that, I receive at least 8 hours of annual training every year.
And is there any certifications that you or your laboratory hold in order to conduct DNA analysis?
Our laboratory is accredited. Accreditation is a process in which the lab undergoes external audits by an outside agency in order to ensure that we are following our own procedures and established procedures in the forensic science community.
No, you mentioned previously that you are required to have about 8 hours of training every year. Do you do all of the training that is required of you?
Yes, I do.
And is it fair to say you typically have more than 8 hours of training in a year?
Some years I might. 8 hours is just the minimum.
Okay. Do you, as part of your work with the crime lab, put together a statement of qualifications?
Yes, I do.
What is a statement of qualifications?
A statement of qualifications is similar to a resume. It's a document that we use at the lab that outlines my position, training, and experience.
Mr. Scott, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 87. Can you review that document for me?
Yes, Exhibit 87 is a copy of my statement of qualifications.
Do you believe that is an accurate and up-to-date statement?
Yes, it is.
I move for admission of Exhibit 87, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 87 will be received.
Mr. Scott, can you discuss what your general duties are as a DNA analyst at the lab?
Yes, as a DNA analyst, I examine crime scene evidence for the presence of bodily fluids such as blood, semen, or saliva. I then attempt to extract or release DNA from those bodily fluids or from any other source of DNA such as skin cells from touched items. I then attempt to generate a DNA profile. I analyze those DNA results and I make comparisons to DNA standards that are taken from known individuals. I will then prepare a written report of my results and conclusions.
And do you have any sort of estimate as to how many times you have conducted analysis of DNA samples?
I've worked somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 cases, and each case can consist anywhere from one item of evidence upwards of several dozen, depending on the case.
Is it fair to say that in your career you've analyzed thousands of DNA samples?
Yes, I have.
And have you testified in court in the past regarding your findings as to your DNA analysis?
Yes, I have.
Have you been accepted as an expert witness in courts in the state of Wisconsin regarding DNA analysis?
Yes, I have.
Mr. Scott, as part of your work with the State Crime Lab, were you asked to assist in an investigation of a homicide case from the city of Green Bay with a case name Shad Therian?
Yes, I was.
And in terms of how cases are identified at the lab, can you talk about what the lab does when they receive a request from law enforcement to analyze for DNA?
Yes. When a case is submitted to the lab, law enforcement will bring the evidence to the lab or otherwise ship it to the lab. Our evidence technicians will give that case a crime lab case number, and each item submitted under that case will get a crime lab item designation. Each item gets its own item letter, starting with letter A. Next item would be letter B, and so on.
Did you have any more? I apologize if I cut you off.
Once I'm assigned to a case, I will then pick up those items of evidence, bring it down to my lab bench, and then start the physical examination of the evidence at that point.
When law enforcement submits a case to the lab for DNA analysis, are there any sort of submission guidelines that the lab gives to law enforcement agencies?
Yes, we do have submission guidelines for evidence that's submitted to the lab. This attempts to reduce the number of items that's submitted to the lab as a resource management tool, just so we aren't overwhelmed with a large number of items. For a homicide-type case, we ask that the submitting agency, the law enforcement agency, try to limit their first round of submission to 10 items of evidence.
Are there occasions where a law enforcement agency may then submit subsequent items to the lab after the initial 10 are sent?
Yes, that does occur sometimes.
And what are typically the circumstances in which a law enforcement agency might submit things in addition to the 10?
It will depend on the case. Most often it's because a probative link to a possible perpetrator has not been established yet.
Is it typical that once a probative link to a perpetrator is established that no additional items are sent to the crime lab?
Again, it will vary by the case, but I would say typically that's true.
Essentially, what is the purpose or the investigative purpose of using DNA analysis in a case? Or can that vary by case?
Yes, that can vary by case.
Obviously, is one of the primary goals to identify a potential perpetrator?
Yes.
And typically, once that has been established, you may not receive additional submissions unless there's some other specific evidentiary purpose for submitting items to the lab.
Objection, Leedy.
Overruled. Answer if you can.
Could you please repeat the question?
Is it typical then that once that identification has been made regarding a suspect, that additional items would not be sent to the lab unless there's some other specifically identified purpose for the testing?
Generally, that's true, yes.
In this particular case, or actually I'll ask before this particular case, generally do you prepare a report regarding your findings of DNA analysis?
Yes, I do.
And in this particular case, did you prepare such a report?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Scott, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 88. Can you review that document and identify it for the jury?
Yes, Exhibit 88 is a copy of the DNA report that I authored in this case dated April 1, 2022.
What is the lab case number that's associated with this case?
Our crime lab case number is M22-636.
And what is the case name?
The case name is Shadrach-Therian.
Mr. Scott, does the report outline the items that you received from law enforcement for purpose of analysis?
Yes, it does.
And what items were received in this case?
I received a buccal swab standard that was reportedly recovered from Taylor Schabusiness. That was item A. Item B was the right-hand swabs reportedly recovered from Taylor Schabusiness. Item C was left-hand swabs reportedly recovered from Taylor Schabusiness. Item D was oral swabs reportedly recovered from Shadrach-Therian. Item E was swab reportedly from a blade. Item F was a swab reportedly from red substance inside of a box. Item G were swabs from a red substance on a bedroom light switch. Item H was sweatpants. Item I was penile swabs reportedly recovered from Shadrach-Therian. And item J was a swab reportedly from a dildo.
I would note you listed several items that were obtained. Many of those are swabs. One of those items was not a swab. Can you talk about the difference between receiving swabs and receiving an item?
Yes, typically the evidence submitted to the lab will either be an item, like a physical item of evidence, such as the sweatpants in this case, or it can be from a sample taken from an item of evidence by the law enforcement agency, which is typically a swab of a item. Swabbing is an oversized Q-tip that is moistened with some water and rubbed up against the item of evidence, hoping to transfer any DNA that's on the item of evidence onto that swab. And then we use the cotton head from that swab for our further DNA processing. And depending on the law enforcement agency and how they do things, either those swabs or the full item of evidence is submitted to the lab.
And with respect to item H, the sweatpants, where you receive the actual item, what is your process then for processing and analyzing an item such as that?
Once I pick up the item of evidence, I will perform a physical examination, typically looking for any staining that may be on the item, that may be from a bodily fluid that's relevant to the case. This is commonly reddish-brown color staining, which could be from blood, which is what I was examining the sweatpants in this case for.
Is receiving a swab versus receiving the item, is one of those forms better or worse than the other, or are they both commonly accepted forms?
They're both commonly accepted forms.
And prior to conducting DNA analysis, do you sometimes do screening on the items that you receive?
Yes, screening is what we refer to the physical examination and testing for bodily fluids and sample collection from the items.
And did you do any such screening in this case?
Yes, I did.
And what screening did you conduct?
So for this case, I was testing some of the items for the possible presence of blood. From the right-hand swabs, item B from Taylor Schabusiness, and the left-hand swabs from Taylor Schabusiness, item C, blood was identified on those swabs. Then from a few other items, the swab from the blade, the swab from the red substance inside the box, the sweatpants, and the swab from the dildo, presumptive testing for blood was also present, or presumptive testing for blood was positive on those 4 items.
Can you describe the difference between actually being able to identify blood with one form of testing and then the presumptive testing with respect to the other items?
Yes, at our lab we commonly use 2 different types of testing for blood. One is referred to as a presumptive testing for blood. This is a very quick test that relies on a color change after dropping a couple chemicals on the sample, and it doesn't require very much sample to be taken. However, that test is called a presumptive test because there are other substances out there that could possibly cause a positive result, even if blood is not present. This is some things that might cause that are rust, some metals, and some vegetable extracts could induce a positive result even if blood is not present. However, that is the more typical test that we use at our lab, just because of how quick and how little sample it uses. Another type of test that we have is a confirmatory test, which confirms the presence of blood on an object. For this case, I performed that confirmatory test on the right and the left-hand swabs. Those were both positive, and I concluded that blood was identified on those swabs.
And with respect to the items where you have the presumptive test, is that the only test that you did was the presumptive test? That is, you didn't then use the confirmatory test on those items?
Correct.
And can you explain, is there a reason why you make the choice to do presumptive with one and confirmatory with the other items?
It can depend on the sample. If the presence of blood is very important to a case, I might choose to perform that confirmatory test, or if for some reason I might think that a presumptive test was positive due to one of those things that might cause a false positive result, I might choose to do a confirmatory test. It could also just depend on the amount of sample I have available to me.
Were there items where either a confirmatory or presumptive test for blood was conducted where blood was not located?
Yes. From the swabs from the red substance on the bedroom light switch, that test was negative, and I concluded that blood was not detected on those swabs from the light switch.
And are there other types of presumptive testing that can be done for other substances?
Yes, we can also test for saliva and semen.
And did you conduct any presumptive testing for saliva in this case?
Yes, I did. I performed a presumptive test for saliva on the penile swabs from Shad Therian. That test was positive, and I concluded that presumptive testing for saliva was positive on those penile swabs.
Is there a confirmatory test for saliva like there is for blood?
We do not have one at our lab.
So there's merely the presumptive testing for saliva, and that is what you did on the penile swabs.
Yes.
And did you do any testing for the potential presence of sperm?
Yes, I did.
And where did you conduct that test?
I tested the penile swabs from Chad Therian, and I did not identify sperm cells. I concluded that sperm cells were not identified on the penile swabs.
And those are all is that all of the screening tests that you did prior to DNA analysis?
For bodily fluids, yes.
And just to confirm, you do that prior to the DNA analysis?
That's correct.
Subsequently, did you then perform DNA analysis on the items that you received?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Just briefly, before we go into those specifics, can you describe for the jury what DNA is?
Yes, so DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it is the genetic material that is present in all living organisms. It is the blueprint that codes for all structures and functions within our body. DNA is inherited, so you receive half of your DNA from your mother and half from your father.
And why is DNA a valuable tool in criminal investigations or in identifying potential individuals?
Yeah, so DNA is valuable because different people will have different DNA profiles. With the exception of identical twins will share the same DNA profile. Almost everybody else will have different DNA profiles, and that allows us to compare DNA profiles taken from items of evidence to DNA standards that are taken from known individuals to see if those profiles match or not.
And what are the common sources of DNA that we can find in the human body?
DNA is found in nearly every cell of the body. Bodily fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva are very good sources of DNA. So if those bodily fluids are present, I would generally expect to find DNA as well. DNA can also be found in other cells such as skin cells that are commonly left behind on touched items.
Is the DNA from a particular person the same throughout their body despite the source of that DNA?
Yes, regardless of which specific source or bodily fluid your DNA comes from, your DNA will be the same throughout your body.
Now, turning back to the DNA analysis that you conducted in this case, can you first describe the autosomal STR DNA analysis that you conducted in this case?
Could you please, clarify your question?
Sure. Well, what is autosomal STR DNA as opposed to other types of DNA like YSTR DNA analysis?
Yes, so at our lab we have two different types of DNA analysis available to us. The more common one is referred to as autosomal STR DNA analysis. Autosomal refers to the DNA that everybody will have, both males and females. Everybody has 23 pairs of chromosomes in their body. 22 of those are referred to as autosomal chromosomes, and the last pair are referred to as the sex chromosomes. So males will have an X and a Y sex chromosome, and females will have two X chromosomes. When we perform the autosomal analysis, we generate a DNA profile from any DNA that's present in that sample. The other option available to us is YSTR testing. YSTR testing generates a DNA profile only from the Y chromosome. So since only males have a Y chromosome and females do not, that YSTR testing will essentially ignore any female DNA that's present in a sample and only generate a profile from male DNA that's present. This is very helpful in samples in which there is a lot of female DNA and a very small amount or relatively small amount of male DNA compared to the female DNA. So if that male DNA is relevant to the case, we might want to perform this YSTR testing to try to help us determine the DNA profile from that Y chromosome. Now, unlike autosomal DNA profiles, YSTR profiles are not as discriminating because they are not unique to any one individual. unrelated, or while most males will generally have different Y profiles, it is possible that unrelated males could just happen to share the same Y profile by chance. And we do expect that all paternally related male relatives, so male relatives who share a father-son type relationship, we would expect that they would also share the same Y profile as well.
So prior to doing your DNA analysis in this case, is there something that you need to do to prepare the samples to be analyzed?
Yes, so once I have my item of evidence, I will take my sample for DNA analysis and then extract or release the DNA that's present in that sample. This is done by adding some water with some chemicals and heating it up in order to break open those cells and release the DNA. I then purify the DNA sample by removing everything else that's not DNA. And once I have my purified DNA extract, I will then quantify that sample to see how much DNA is present. If there is a sufficient amount of DNA present in that sample, we will then try to generate a DNA profile. And depending on how much total human DNA or male DNA that's present in a sample, we will then choose at that point whether we attempt to generate an autosomal profile or a Y profile.
As you began your analysis of the individual items in this case, did you note items that appeared to be sort of what you might call standards for the individuals that were involved in this case?
Yes, I did.
And which items were those?
So item A was a buccal swab standard reportedly from Taylor Schabusiness. A buccal swab is a swabbing of the inside of somebody's cheek, hoping to gather DNA from that person's mouth. We then process that buccal swab standard in the same manner as an item of evidence to generate a DNA profile, and we use that DNA profile as that person's DNA profile for the purpose of comparisons. I also received oral swabs, item D. Those oral swabs were from Shadtherian.
And were you able to develop single source profiles for both item A1 and item D1?
Yes, I was.
And what is a single source profile?
So when we generate a DNA profile, that DNA profile will either be single source or from just one individual, or it could be a mixture of DNA. So that DNA profile could have DNA from multiple individuals.
Which of those are more easier to work with when doing comparisons?
Typically, single source profiles are easier, as we can just do a direct comparison between that single source profile and the profile from the DNA standards in order to see if they are consistent with each other or not.
So once you develop those single source profiles, presumably both for Taylor Schabusiness and Shadtherian, did you then conduct comparisons for subsequent items that were analyzed?
Yes, I did.
And specifically as it relates to item B1, what was item B1?
Item B1, to back up a little bit, item B were the right-hand swabs from Taylor Schabusiness. When I took a sample from that swab, I just cut a little bit of the swab off for DNA analysis. That cutting from the swab was called item B1 for the purposes of tracking within our system. So item B1 is also from the right-hand swabs from Taylor Schabusiness.
And what did your analysis, what were the results of your analysis with respect to that item B1?
I developed a 3-person mixture, so 3 different individuals contributed DNA to this mixture. At least one of those 3 individuals was male. At that point, I analyzed this DNA mixture using a computer program called StarMix. StarMix is a tool that we use at our lab to help us interpret DNA mixture profiles. It works by modeling the DNA mixture by trying to determine the most likely individual contributor profiles that, when mixed together, can explain the mixture that we observed or that we detected from the item. So at the end of the interpretation, what we have is a list of the most likely individual profiles that can explain this mixture. Once we have that list, We will then compare the DNA profiles from the people thought to be involved in the case in order to see if they do have one of those possible profiles. If they do not have one of those possible profiles, they are excluded as a possible contributor to the mixture, meaning that DNA mixture cannot be modeled using that person's DNA profile. Therefore, their DNA is not present. If their DNA is one of the possible profiles, then we will get a likelihood ratio. And what that likelihood ratio is a level of support for the strength of the comparison. Essentially, the higher the likelihood ratio is, the more support there is that that person's DNA is present in the mixture. And the lower the number is, the more support there would be that that person's DNA is not present in the mixture. So for this particular sample, the right-hand swabs from Taylor Schabusiness, I analyzed this assuming a 3-person mixture using star mix. I also assumed the presence of DNA from Taylor Schabusiness. Since this was a swab from her hand, we would expect to find DNA from her. It did also appear that her DNA was present in the mixture. So when I analyzed this mixture, essentially I told that computer program that one of those 3 contributors is Taylor Schabusiness, so then it would model the other 2 contributors. So once we had that interpretation and made the comparison to Shadtherian, I found that it is at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe this DNA mixture profile if it is a mixture resulting from Taylor Schabusiness and Shadtherian and 1 other person, than if it were a mixture resulting from Taylor Schabusiness and 2 random unknown people. That provides very strong support for inclusion, or very strong support that DNA from Shadtherian is present in the mixture.
Now, the way in which you report this data as a ratio, is that the standard process when you have DNA mixtures? That is, does the lab actually tell someone that a person's DNA is present, that it is the source of DNA, or does the lab always report it out as a ratio like this when you have a mixture?
It will depend on the type of mixture and how much DNA each contributor contributes. But when this star mix computer program is used, then yes, this ratio is how we will report out all comparisons.
Okay. Is there any way to sort of quantify for the jury or describe how big of a number 1 quadrillion is?
1 quadrillion would be 1 followed by 15 zeros. It's also 1,000 trillion.
Now, was that 1 quadrillion, at least 1 quadrillion times, is that the exact number of the ratio in this case?
No, the numbers can go much higher. We cap that likelihood ratio at 1 quadrillion just to keep that number down in a range that's more recognizable.
So it's possible that in this case the likelihood was even greater than 1 quadrillion. You simply will never report a number that's higher than 1 quadrillion.
That's correct.
And did you follow that same process for the left-hand swabs from Taylor Schabusiness in item C?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to develop a mixture in that case as well?
Yes, I did. From the left-hand swabs, I developed a 2-person mixture, so 2 different people contributed DNA to that mixture. Again, one of those 2 people appeared to be Taylor Schabusiness, so when I analyzed this mixture using star mix, I assumed the presence of DNA from Taylor. When I compared the DNA profile from Shadtherian to that mixture, I found that it was at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe that DNA mixture profile if it is a mixture resulting from Taylor Schabusiness and Shadtherian than if it were a mixture resulting from Taylor Schabusiness and a random unknown person. This also provides very strong support for inclusion, or very strong support that DNA from Shadtherian is present in the mixture.
And item B and C, the 2 items that we just talked about with respect to the DNA analysis, again, were those the 2 items that you had tested for the presence of blood as well?
Yes, blood was identified on those 2 items.
Okay. With the confirmatory test?
Yes.
And so again, the result in terms of the 1 quadrillion times, that's essentially the maximum number that you could reach, and that was in item C1 as well.
That's correct.
Let's move on to item E. What was item E?
Item E was a swab from a blade.
And what sort of analysis did you conduct with respect to item E?
I developed a single source male profile, so just a DNA profile from one male individual. I then compared that male profile to the profiles I developed from the standards in this case, and I found that that profile is consistent with the profile from Shadtherian. Now, anytime we make a direct comparison between two profiles and find that they are consistent with each other, I perform a statistical analysis on that evidentiary profile in order to estimate roughly how rare or how common that profile is in the general population. If that profile is more rare than 1 in 7 trillion individuals, with 7 trillion being roughly 1,000 times the world's population, if that profile is more rare than 1 in 7 trillion, I will state that that individual is the source of that DNA. So for this particular sample, the swab from the blade, that single source male profile, I concluded that Shadtherian is the source of that DNA.
And item E, is that a test that you, or is that a swab that you also did a presumptive test for blood on?
Yes, that test was positive for the presumptive test for blood.
Moving on to item F, what sort of testing was conducted on item F?
Item F was a swab from red substance inside of a box. I developed a two-person mixture, so two different people contributed DNA to that mixture. At least one of those two was male. For this particular mixture, one of those individuals contributed the vast majority of DNA to the mixture, and I was able to determine the major male contributor, which is the DNA profile from that one male individual who contributed the vast majority of DNA to the mixture. I then compared that major male contributor profile to the profiles from the DNA standards, and I concluded that Shadtherian is the source of that major male contributor profile. Now, there was a minor contributor as well. However, the amount of DNA that we detected from that minor contributor was very low, and it was not suitable for comparisons.
That the idea that there might be a minor contributor that is contributes such a small amount of DNA to a mixture, is that something that you encounter regularly in your DNA analysis?
Yes, we do.
Just generally, how is it possible that small amounts of DNA can be found on swabs of certain items? How do we transfer our DNA from one place to another?
Object, calls for speculation, foundation, Your Honor.
Overruled.
So just to clarify, are you asking like how DNA transfer occurs?
Correct.
So when we think of DNA transfer, we tend to think of it in terms of primary transfer and secondary DNA transfer. So primary transfer would be the direct transfer of DNA to an object. So if I handle an object, such as my water bottle here, some of my DNA might transfer to the water bottle through that direct contact. That would be primary transfer. Secondary transfer is also possible, in which DNA is transferred through an intermediary object to an object that I never directly handled. So if some of my DNA is on this water bottle and it comes into contact with another object, it is possible that some of my DNA might transfer to that second object, even though I never had any direct contact with it.
In that DNA transfer that you talked about what is possible, does DNA always transfer when someone handles an item?
No, not necessarily. There are a number of things that can influence how much, if any, DNA is transferred. But just because an object is handled, that doesn't necessarily mean that enough DNA will transfer for us to be able to detect. It can vary by the person as well. Two different people could handle an object for the same amount of time, and we might only detect DNA from one and not the other.
I think you mentioned earlier certain substances like blood, semen, saliva tend to be good conveyors of DNA. Is that true?
That's correct. Bodily fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva are very good sources of DNA.
So, are you familiar with the term touch DNA?
Yes.
What does that generally refer to?
Touch DNA generally refers to DNA that is transferred to an object through touch or through skin cells that are left behind on that object during handling.
And generally, if we were to compare touch DNA as opposed to the transfer of the bodily fluids that we suggested earlier, which are more effective at transferring DNA from one place to another?
Typically, bodily fluids would have more DNA than touch DNA, but of course, it could depend on how much bodily fluids there are and or how much touch DNA is on the object.
Thank you. After that educational aside, I'll transfer back to the report, and I would ask you to discuss item G in the analysis that you conducted on item G.
Item G was swabs from a red substance on a bedroom light switch. I developed a 3-person mixture, and at least 2 of those 3 individuals were male. And I analyzed this assuming 3 individuals using star mix. When I compared the DNA profile from Taylor Schabusiness to this mixture, I found that it is at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe that DNA mixture profile if it is a mixture resulting from Taylor Schabusiness and 2 other people than if it were a mixture resulting from 3 random unknown people. This provides very strong support for inclusion, or very strong support that DNA from Taylor Schabusiness is present in the mixture. I then compared the DNA profile from Shadtherian and also found that it is at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe that DNA mixture profile if it is a mixture resulting from Shadtherian and 2 other people than if it were a mixture resulting from 3 random unknown people. This also provides very strong support for inclusion, or very strong support that DNA from Shadtherian is present in the mixture.
And then moving to item H, what was item H?
Item H was the sweatpants that I examined in this case.
And what did you do to then further evaluate those sweatpants prior to doing DNA analysis?
I examined the sweatpants looking for staining that appeared reddish-brown color. That could be blood. I did observe staining, reddish-brown staining on the sweatpants, and I ended up taking 4 different samples from 4 different reddish-brown stains.
And again, did you do presumptive testing for blood on that item? H?
Yeah, yes, I did. All 4 of those stains were positive for the, or they were presumptively positive. So presumptive testing for blood was positive on those sweatpants.
And 4 different swabs that you generated, then we'll take those one by one. Can you first address item H1 in the analysis that you conducted on H1?
Item H1 was the first sample I took, a swabbing of a reddish-brown stain on the right leg of the sweatpants. I developed a 2-person mixture. One of those 2 appeared to be male. One of those individuals contributed more DNA than the other, and I was able to determine a major female contributor, which again is that DNA profile from that one female individual who contributed the most DNA to the mixture. And I concluded that Taylor Schabusiness is the source of that major female contributor DNA. I was also able to determine a minor male contributor DNA profile, and I concluded that Shadtherian is the source of that minor male DNA, so the lesser contributor of DNA to the mixture.
Yeah, and did you conduct a similar analysis on item H2?
Yes, item H2 was a swabbing of a reddish-brown stain on the left leg of the sweatpants. I again developed a 2-person mixture, and one of those 2 was male. I was able to determine a major female contributor, and I concluded that Taylor Schabusiness is the source of that major female contributor DNA. I was also able to determine a minor male contributor, and I concluded that Shadtherian is the source of that minor male contributor DNA.
And again, those source attributions, is that because it's more than 1 in 7 trillion times more likely that it would be them than some other person?
So that 7 trillion number is not a likelihood ratio. It's a different type of stat. It's a probability. So the probability of randomly selecting an individual from the population in general, that probability is more rare than 1 in 7 trillion. The probability of randomly selecting a profile that would match that evidentiary profile by chance.
Now, moving to item H3, which is the third swab from the sweatpants, you conducted a similar analysis, but the result ended up being a little bit different, is that right?
Yes, this one was a little bit different. I developed a 2-person mixture. At least one of those 2 appeared to be male. For this particular mixture, I analyzed using star mix, assuming a 2-person mixture. When I compared the DNA profile from Taylor Schabusiness, I found that it is at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe that DNA mixture profile if it is a mixture resulting from Taylor Schabusiness and 1 other person than if it were a mixture resulting from 2 random unknown people. This provides very strong support for inclusion, or very strong support that DNA from Taylor Schabusiness is present in the mixture. I then compared the DNA profile from Shad Therian and also found that it is at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe that DNA mixture profile if it is a mixture resulting from Shad Therian and 1 other person than if it were a mixture resulting from 2 random unknown people. That also provides very strong support for inclusion, or very strong support that DNA from Shad Therian is present in the mixture.
And Mr. Scott, can you explain why with this 2-person mixture you used the star mix to conduct your analysis as opposed to the sorts of source attributions that you did with the previous mixtures?
Yes, with the previous 2 mixtures, there was enough of a difference in the amount of DNA that was contributed by both, in which I was able to easily determine the profile from the major contributor and the minor contributor. With this third swabbing, the swabbing of the reddish-brown stain on the left leg, H3, there wasn't as clear of a difference between the contributions of DNA between those 2.
And then the final swabbing of the sweatpants, item H4, what was your analysis as it related to that item?
This item H4, another swabbing of a reddish-brown stain on the right leg of the sweatpants. I developed a single source male profile, and I concluded that Shad Therian is the source of that DNA.
Move on to then item I1. What was item I, and then tell us what item I1 is.
So item I was the penile swabs from Shad Therian. Item I1 is the cutting that I took from that swab for the purposes of DNA analysis.
And what sort of analysis did you then conduct on that item?
I developed a single source male profile, and I concluded that Shad Therian is the source of that DNA.
And with respect to item J, what is that item?
Item J was a swab from a dildo.
And what sort of analysis did you conduct on that item?
I developed a 3-person mixture. At least one of those 3 individuals was male, and I analyzed that mixture using star mix, assuming 3 individuals. When I compared the DNA profile from Taylor Schabusiness, I found that it is at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe that DNA mixture profile if it is a mixture resulting from Taylor Schabusiness and 2 other people than if it were a mixture resulting from 3 random unknown people. That provides very strong support for inclusion, or very strong support that DNA from Taylor Schabusiness is present in the mixture. I then compared the DNA profile from Shad Therian, and I received an uninformative likelihood ratio. So uninformative just means that statistical values in that range have been observed both for individuals known to be in a mixture and individuals known to not be in a mixture. Therefore, no conclusion will be made regarding the presence of DNA from Shadtherian to that mixture. Essentially, there is no strong support that his DNA is there, and there's no strong support that his DNA is not there.
And then you mentioned, so does that, the summary that we went through, does that cover all of the autosomal STR DNA analysis that you conducted in this case?
Yes, it is.
And you talked earlier about this, the YSTR DNA and conclusions that you, that there is YSTR DNA analysis that can be done. Did you utilize that in this case?
Yes, I did.
And what items did you test for using the YSTR method?
So using that YSTR method, I tested the oral swabs from Shadtherian for use as a standard for comparisons. And I also tested the swab from the dildo. So that swab from the dildo had a large amount of female DNA and a relatively small amount of male DNA. So I decided to perform this YSTR testing on it as well.
And with respect to item J1, what was your YSTR testing conclusion?
I developed a mixture of at least 2 males. So at least 2 different males contributed DNA to this mixture. This mixture is suitable for exclusionary purposes only. So I cannot make an inclusionary statement, or I cannot say that somebody is consistent with the DNA in this mixture. I can only make comparisons, and if there are enough differences between the mixture and the individual standard, I might be able to say that that person's DNA is not present, so they would be excluded. Otherwise, if they cannot be excluded, they would be inconclusive. So for this comparison, I compared the YSTR profile from Shadtherian to this mixture from the swab from the dildo, and I concluded that the possible contribution of DNA from Shadtherian is inconclusive due to the complexity of the mixture.
Mr. Scott, the conclusions that you testified here to today and the conclusions that are contained in your report, are those your opinions to a reasonable degree of professional responsibility?
I believe so.
I would move for the admission of the exhibit, Your Honor. I think it's 88.
All right, any objection to 88?
One moment, Your Honor. No objection.
88 will be received.
No further questions for the witness at this time.
Okay, cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Mr. Scott, good afternoon. As to the testing and swabbing of the dildo item J1, are you saying that you could not confirm whether or not Shadtherian's DNA is on that item? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. He had an uninformative conclusion for the autosomal results and an inconclusive conclusion for the YSTR results.
If that item was touched on someone's body, would it be likely that DNA would show up on that item?
DNA can transfer to an item, that's possible. However, it is also possible that an object could be touched and we would not be able to detect enough of that person's DNA to develop a profile.
If I shook your hand, would my DNA likely transfer to your hand and vice versa?
It's possible.
You tested a light switch, correct?
I tested
a profile from a light switch?
Yes, I had a swab that was reportedly from a light switch.
Do you know which light switch it was?
It was from a red substance on a bedroom light switch.
Okay. And it's true that blood was not detected on that light switch? That's item G?
Correct, blood was not detected on that item.
But you don't know what location, correct? Where they came from, which light switch, what address?
If I remember correctly, I thought it was from Taylor Schabusiness's apartment, but I don't have that information in my report.
That would be at Eastman Avenue? On Eastman Avenue, do you know?
I would have to check my my notes that I have with me to see if that information is available. I don't remember offhand.
You tested some penile swabs from Shadtherian, correct?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that? What was the purpose of the testing?
They were submitted to me.
Okay, but you were looking for DNA, correct?
Yes.
His DNA?
I was looking for any DNA that was present on the item.
Okay. And sperm cells were not identified on the penile swabs from Mr. Therian. That was item I, correct?
That's correct.
So when you do DNA testing, you just test whatever you're asked to test, correct?
Typically, we do have the ability to choose which items that we want to test, and occasionally if a case has a probative result, we may not continue testing other items depending on the circumstances of the case. But in general, I would test most of the items that are submitted to me.
Okay. I know that you found some very strong support for inclusion as it results from the right and left hand swabs of Taylor Schabusiness, correct?
That's correct.
And basically, are you saying that you found DNA from Shadtherian on Ms. Schabusiness's hands? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that there is very strong support that DNA from Shadtherian is present on those swabs.
Okay. And if people are hanging out, going out for dinner or using drugs or whatever they're doing, and they have physical contact in some way, shape, or form, DNA can be transferred, correct?
That's possible, yes.
You did look at swabs from the inside of a box, right?
That's correct.
That was item F1?
Correct.
And the major contributor to the inside of the box was Shadtherian, correct?
That's correct, yes.
No DNA from Taylor Schabusiness was found in the box or on the box, correct?
So there was a minor contributor, however, it was not suitable for comparison, so that could be from anybody, including Taylor Schabusiness.
Okay. If I, just hypothetically speaking, if I picked up a box and put it in the back of my car or put it downstairs in the basement or wherever, would my DNA likely transfer to the box?
It's possible.
When you refer to a minor contributor, what does that mean? Can you explain that for me?
Yeah, so in a profile that has a major contributor and a minor contributor, the major contributor would just be the DNA profile from that one person who contributed the most DNA to the mixture, and the minor contributor would be the profile from the person who contributed the lesser amount of DNA to that mixture.
Okay. And when you talk about DNA being found, you're not necessarily saying it's blood, saliva, semen, or anything. You're just saying that it's DNA, correct?
Correct. Typically, when we generate these DNA profiles, they would typically be from any source of DNA that's present on the item, whether it's skin cells or blood or saliva.
Okay. And hypothetically speaking, if I have people over to my residence and I have a get-together, and people touch the light switch, maybe they go in the bathroom and use the switch, does that, would their DNA likely transfer to the light switch?
It's possible.
Is that how sometimes you can have a two or multiple person mixture? Is that how that results?
If there's DNA from multiple individuals on the item, then there could be a mixture, yes.
Okay, I have no other questions, thank you.
Redirect?
Sort of a small point of clarification, as it related to item F, which was the swab reportedly from a red substance inside a box. You didn't actually do that swabbing yourself, correct?
Correct. I received a swab from the law enforcement agency.
And the swab itself specifically denoted that it was from a red substance inside the box, correct?
Yes, that was the information that was given to me.
Typically, if you saw that, that would not be suggestive that the entire outside of the box would have been swabbed and included in that as well, correct?
I would assume it was only from the swabbing of that substance inside the box, not the outside.
Thank you. No further questions.
Anything on those questions, Mr. Fraley?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. You're excused. Okay, state's next witness.
State called Olivia Sassman.